Alrighty, hello everybody, and welcome to the second annual PIGSquad Game Funeral. And it might sound a little morbid, but I think tonight is going to be a happy night and a funny night and a fun night. We're going to hear from a bunch of developers in the community who are going to be sharing about game development projects that have been discontinued, that they were once working on. So there's going to be a couple talks about like jam games that didn't go anywhere, or, you know, they went somewhere but didn't get finished, or concepts for really long-term projects, anything like that. And it's really interesting and a great practice to kind of post-mortem projects and talk about why they were failures, or talk about your learning moments, or tell anecdotes about those kinds of things, because we can all look back on those together and learn how to better make games. Last year was super fun. My friend Ted even surprised us with a game that allowed you to bury the files of your game, and it made like a little headstone and stuff. It was very respectful, very tasteful. So yeah, that was really funny and fun. I'm seeing in the chat some people don't know about our first game funeral. So our first game funeral is actually on our YouTube page, if you ever want to check that out. That's just at youtube.com/PIGSquad. And we also have a ton of other content on there around kind of learning, not only just workshops, but also kind of like bits of learning anecdotes and everything like that on just like any topic you could imagine, including punching up your writing, or tabling at an expo, or how to program a multiplayer game, or how to learn the basics of animation, all that kind of stuff. So super fun. I wanted to talk a little bit, for those of you who don't know, about what PIGSquad is. The Portland Indie Game Squad is a 501c3 nonprofit, and we help game developers get together and meet and make stuff. So we have a ton of things like game jams and networking meetups and things like these events where people are presenting, always going on. And that does not just mean in-person things, although as you can see from some of these pictures scrolling by on our website, we used to primarily be in person, but we've been able to transition that stuff to online channels and been able to keep it going through things like Twitch and doing hangouts on our Discord page. If you look at our calendar on the 29th, which is next week, we are going to be doing an art code night where people are going to be hanging out in the Discord channel together and just co-working or sharing notes about each other's projects. Maybe breaking down some of the things that we learned from Game Funeral. There's always a lot of moments where people are kind of helping each other out, or just kind of checking out what each other are working on, and either staying productive or getting into a lot of chats or playing games together and not being productive. But it's good to always meet people, because that leads to a lot of long-term connections. At least that's what we found from doing PIGSquad for a while. So yeah, I guess before we get started right away, I want to let everybody know that a little bit later in this event, I'm going to be sharing some special tricky or treaty news, so keep watch for that. Of course, we appreciate anybody sharing information about this event on Twitter right now, since it's live and easy to click and hear from all the developers that will be showcasing this evening. And then I also wanted to say, too, that we have... Oh, what was I going to say? Oh, that we have a community showcase coming up as well. And this is a showcase dedicated to games that are just just in progress in the community right now. We have a lot of people sign up, so it's just a lot of really cool content to see. Great to keep tabs on what everybody's working on. So this evening we are going to hear from our friend Isaac about a game called Time's New Gunman. We're going to be hearing from our friend Patrice from a game called Outbreak in Space. Hearing from our friend Toby, who always gives great presentations on, it's a 20-minute presentation on 20 game prototypes that were scrapped. And if you know Toby and have seen work from like Talent Talks and everything like that, you'll know that there's a lot of work that goes into prototypes that's like easily finds its way into longer term projects that are really, really impressive. So that one I'm very much looking forward to as well. We have our friend Erik presenting on Breakbeats, which was a global game jam game a couple years ago. Friend Andrew is going to be reviewing Tavern, Brawl, Dungeon Crawl. And then our friend Stephan is going to be talking about the Viking World. So lots of stuff going on. I'm really excited. But yeah, let's just get into it. We're going to be hearing from people about their canceled game projects and kind of getting some perspective on that. So I'd like to introduce our friend Isaac, who is going to be talking about Time's New Gunman. Round of applause, please.
Hi there. My name is Isaac Goodfellow, and this is the game funeral for Time's New Gunman. Time's New Gunman was a comedy typing game set in the Wild West, featuring cowboy duels, cowboy insults, and comedic text-to-speech. A little bit about me. I currently work at Rose City Games as a game programmer, working on Floppy Nights, which you should wishlist on Steam if you like tactics games. I've also done several game jams, like making physical things, and I've previously done work for museums and cultural institutions. This is my friend ZC that I worked on the project with. ZC is one of the funniest people I know and an incredible artist. They are working on their own game right now that's called Misericord, and you should go wishlist that on Steam. It's a mystery visual novel that's set in a convent in the 1400s, and it looks really cool. They're doing all the music, they're doing code, and they're doing all the art and the story. It looks awesome. So let's set the stage for this game. It's 2014, which is ancient history by now. I'm living in Olympia, working on film projects occasionally. I'm working on graphics stuff. I just graduated, basically. And I've heard about this cool thing that's happening in Portland where people are doing game jams. And I thought, it doesn't really have to be part of any official event. We could just try this and give ourselves an artificial timeline. Let's try to learn Unity in a weekend and make a game while doing it. And so that didn't happen, obviously. We kind of fumbled around for a weekend. But then we chipped away over the next couple months at this typing game that we thought up. And so the idea is that you are given a text string that is a like Wild Westy insult call out thing, and it's before your duel, and you got to type it before the other person. And as you're typing it, it's read out word for word with this pitch shifted, slowed down Southern text to speech voice. So it kind of sounds like this as it's reading it out. And it was just this fun, cute little idea that we thought we would get working pretty quickly. We're going to have procedural enemies. We're going to have procedural text here. And we were going to have like increasing difficulty over time. So here's what is working of the Unity prototype. It was done in an ancient version of Unity that no longer imports to the modern version of Unity very well. A lot of it got garbled. There's no enemy animations. But there's one cool thing that I forgot about, which is the fingers move when you're typing. That was a cool little detail that ZC added. As I mentioned before, we're going to have this difficulty progression where things were going to get harder over time. We're also going to have procedural enemies that you could look back at in the graveyard in case like something funny came out of the procedural text. But there were a few challenges. You might have figured out by now this game kind of had a fairly big scope for a game jam game where you don't know your tools. So the first challenge was content. With procedural content produces itself, but the structure doesn't, and the corpus that your content draws from does not. So one way of generating a lot of text is with what's called a Markov chain, and that uses probability based on what's called a corpus of text, where it looks at that and it says this word is most likely to be followed by this word, especially if it's got these other words before it. And so sometimes you produce things like the above comic that almost make sense in context, but that's just because you've hit randomize so many times. But usually you end up with something on the bottom where it doesn't make much sense and it's not funny, and like your brain kind of goes numb after you've experienced enough of Markov chain generated text. So this wasn't going to work perfectly, but we wanted to try and use elements of it in our procedural text. The next thing we wanted to look at was a context-free grammar. And this worked well because we were able to very finely structure what we were producing. We were able to set up these tags where we say adjective, noun, ing, verb, noun, and then we're able to build a dictionary of cowboy-seeming things like that. If you think about like quips and one-liners, they're clever. You know, they need this sort of handcrafted feel to them where they feel like there's actual intent behind it. So if you take this string and you put it into a content-free grammar that has dictionaries built for adjectives, nouns, ing, verbs, nouns, you get something like why you stinking cattle, wrestling, cur. The cool thing about this is if you run it like 5 times and you've got, hundreds of different adjectives, nouns, and things, you're going to get 5 different sentences. And if you have enough of these input sentences at the top here, you're going to get a lot of different content. So this worked pretty well, but it would still get stale over time. And it's also really hard to write a lot of these and make them sound different. That was the biggest challenge, was just writing enough different insults for content. So next challenge was players. It's 2014. It's a little bit harder to get people to play your game than it is now. Steam Greenlight was a thing for games that had to be downloaded, but you had to have people vote on it, and that's unlikely to happen with a weird indie game. Congregate existed, but Congregate was for like web player-based games. I believe they had to choose what was on the platform. We were a non-starter on the web platform thing because of the text-to-speech. Nothing that existed at the time was good for doing text-to-speech on the web, specifically with the type of accent that we wanted. Itch.io was actually an option that I didn't know existed, so that would have been cool, but at the same time, it's hard to get people to download a game. So the next part is the craft of making games. I had never made a game before. I had made a lot of little graphics projects. Ben Esposito said this best with, "Nobody told me when you make a video game, you have to make the whole thing." So there's a lot involved in a video game beyond the tight little game loop that you learn in things like the Unity tutorial for the space shooter where you fly around with the arrow keys. There's stuff involved in making a whole game where you save, you load, you have options menu, things like that. And in our case, you have to use a complicated text-to-speech plugin. So I had just done like little simple things. I didn't know the kind of difficulties involved in actual software development. And so that was another stumbling block, was just getting those things working, period. So all of those things were overcomable, right? We could have kept working for a while. We could have had a game that wasn't that content rich. We could have scaled down a lot of those things. But one of the big things for us was we wanted text-to-speech. And text-to-speech is a business-to-business hell world. You're not going to find a pricing model that works for an indie game. You're definitely not going to find a pricing model that works for a weird art indie game. It's mostly set up for telemarketers that are trying to trick old people into thinking it's a real person, either so they don't get yelled at or so they can scam you. There's just not a pricing model that works for indie things. There's open source stuff, but it usually relies on the operating system, or it relies on something that has to be downloaded and plugins, and then we're severely limited by platform and stuff like that. And nothing that worked well on the web at this time. It's all set up for accessibility stuff, which is great, but it's all set up with the assumption that you're putting your content in divs and stuff like that, and it would just be extremely hacky to make that work. And then we wouldn't have a fun cowboy accent. So where do we go from here? Things take a little bit of a left turn here. I would love to tell you that I started showing up to PIGSquad things, that I consistently made games, all those things, but unfortunately that's not what happened. And I'm going into this because I think there might be a lot of people in this kind of scenario right now where you feel like there was a trajectory that you wanted your life to take the last 2 years, and it probably hasn't taken that for everyone, I would assume. But if you're just getting started, it's particularly hard to have something like that come out of nowhere. And I kind of want to share what I did to get through this period of my life, and just use that as a jumping off point for someone that might be in this position. So my partner of several years had a stroke in 2014, and this was just after we had kind of fumbled through making our first game. I was at my first job, and I had to show up for her in a lot of ways that a 23-year-old is not really used to showing up for people. And I was also working at the same time and just felt very estranged from everybody else in the world because I was going through something so extreme that most people don't go through at that age. It was a long time for me to start showing up to stuff. But this has a happy ending. She survived her stroke. She's doing awesome. She's in grad school. And I am getting paid to make games, which is cool. I kind of stumbled my way into it through doing a few things. I didn't quite realize at the time that I was doing them that they were going to pay off. But they're things that I think have a good chance of paying off. Eventually. They're not going to be the quickest route to success, but it's going to be when you feel like you can't do anything, it's the bare minimum, basically. It's the being gentle with yourself part of it, I guess. And so those things are, the first one would just be show up. For a long time, I was showing up to just the showcase events. I was not really talking to people. So what I would suggest to you is if there's something you want to be involved in, like PIGSquad, for example, I want you to show up. It's going to be a little difficult, especially if you feel, like I said, kind of estranged from the world. But if you start showing up and you start talking to people, things like that, you will start feeling a little bit more like you belong. And so there's Art Code Night coming up, and I want you to show up to that. And if you feel awkward talking to anybody, feel comfortable, please, talking to me, honestly. Just show up and say something to me. The next thing would be just do something. When you're feeling bad enough, you can get pretty frustrated because you don't want to do anything. And this is pretty difficult to overcome, to even feel like you should do something or like you should feel better. But you do deserve to feel better. I want to be the person to tell you that. You deserve to feel good, and you deserve to feel creative and fulfilled and all those things. And the step to doing that is just doing something. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be the thing that you're known for forever. Just work on some project a little bit. And the other part of that is share it with people. If you just work on it in private, people won't know about it. But if you kind of steadily work on something and show it off, or work on a few things over time and show those things off, it will be fulfilling because you will have started to put yourself out there. So the last one is just being a good person and being a person that people want to work with. Like I said before, this is not like an immediate payoff strategy. You're still going to maybe end up working places you don't want to, with people you don't want to. People are going to try to take advantage of you, but those are not going to be the only people you're working with. There's going to be a lot of other people there that feel the same way about the place that you're working. And if you leave a good impression on them, if you treat people with dignity and respect, no matter how stressed out you are, no matter how difficult your life is at the moment, people are going to remember you for how you treated them. And when your name comes up as somebody that they're looking to hire at some other place, they're going to say, that is somebody I want to work with. I have had a consistent positive experience with that person. And it's hard. It can be really difficult when you're hurting to be a good person. This is another, you owe it to yourself to be a good person. Things are a little bit easier when you give other people grace and yourself grace. Anyways, I hope some of that information is useful to even just one person. Thank you for your time. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at Goodfellow Isaac. ZC is at ZC Vivo. And go wishlist Floppy Nights and Misericord. And I'm going to shut the casket on Times New Gunman. It was this beautiful, fun little idea to me, but I don't think I'm ever going to be able to sit down and spend the time on it, and I don't think text-to-speech is ever going to be in a place where I want it to be.
Righty. Thank you so much, Isaac. That was great. Amazing advice for everybody. Yeah, F's in the chat for the cowboy voice that never was, but also huge claps in the chat for Isaac. I think, dang it, we've got like something funny to do right after this, and I don't want to just follow up something so real and serious and such good advice with just goofiness. But no, seriously, follow all of Isaac's advice. I totally agree with everything he says too, around just like showing up and just kind of like dipping your toes in and everything like that. That's always what I recommend when we talk about PIGSquad with people, and then as a couple of people in chat are saying too, just like, yep, like this is what led me to joining up with PIGSquad and kind of setting the trajectory of my career for the next 6 years. But as Isaac also suggests, sometimes that trajectory doesn't. It's a lot of winding paths to sometimes get where you need to be. And sometimes you find yourself in a place that you really enjoy, even though it was never part of your goal. So, yeah, thank you so much, Isaac. Really helpful to hear now, too, especially in the midst of the pandemic. I know a lot of people are getting really tired of stuff right now. So thanks so much for kind of talking through that and giving some heartwarming advice. And as Isaac said, too, be sure to reach out to him. Be sure to come out to the next Art Code Night so that you can reach out to us, so you can reach out to some of the people who are in chat right now. All that really, really matters. And I think Isaac just fully explained why. Okay, I'll do the goofy thing now. We have to do this for every game. Sorry. So let's see. Times New Gunman, we appreciate you and all of the things that you have done for Isaac's trajectory in his career. I love chatting with Isaac and working with him, and so thankful, Times New Gunman, for what you have provided us. We now put you to rest. Thank you, Times New Gunman. Oops, wrong button. There we go. And thank you, Isaac. With that, yeah, this is where the F's in the chat can come into. With that, we are going to move to our next presentation from our friend Patrice, who is going to be talking about Outbreak in space. So please, round of applause.
Hello, PIGSquad. My name is Patrice Metcalf-Putnam, and I'm a developer up in Seattle. And I'm here today to lay to rest my game, Outbreak in Space. Outbreak in Space. We created this game for Jamming the Curve, which is a game jam all about using the power of games to help educate and promote pro-social behavior amidst the COVID-19 pandemic, complete with a suite of amazing mentors and even cash prizes and a grant for one lucky game. I actually got into game development at the start of the pandemic, and this is my 4th ever game jam. My team was ambitious, probably a little too ambitious, but we pulled it off, and our game was even called one of the more polished games by a journalist who covered the event. Plus, we won one of the 5 $1,000 cash prizes. To give you a little taste, I'll play the 90-second trailer really quick. So that is the trailer. It was a lot. Everything you saw there was done in the 2 weeks of the game jam. And we had a little bullet hell mini game. For reasons, I think we thought that since the kind of main game itself was tending a little bit more towards the educational, not so much towards the super fun game, thought to balance it out a little bit. People were getting lost. The world was physically too large, and most people playing didn't even get to the kind of twist ending that was the crux of the entire game. So overall it was mostly, if you played through, it maybe took you 30 minutes, 45 minutes for something that you could speedrun in a few minutes. So that was not great, but we did a lot of really cool things. The main thing that we wanted to focus on with this is to think about how we could actually influence behavior, because it's one thing to say to people, and especially to kids, that your behavior affects others, be safe, but it's completely different to actually kind of force them to live that in a safe and controlled environment. For instance, to have their in-game behavior kill or save Granny Murktuck. When you start the game, there's one case in the whole town, and spoiler alert, it's you, the player, who is completely asymptomatic. In the game, you can talk to a number of NPCs and even sing to everyone's enjoyment, but every time you do, you're shedding more viral particles and making it more likely they'll officially catch the virus and start spreading it themselves. The whole system we used for infectious spread I'm actually pretty proud of. It's a little too in-depth going for this talk, but it's not just like a on-off switch of like you're infected or you're not, or you're spreading or you're not. There's a lot of things about like the time from infection to contagion, all those sorts of things. We didn't want to cover this in the game itself, but we did include after the sort of end scene, there's access to Overlord powers where you can actually see the infection spread. And I can actually give you a look here. Make sure I unpause. Okay. So now here's the sort of infection visuals on off that you can put to see what's going on. So you, the player, is the only one that is even infected right now in this case. Here's the mayor, his little mayor house. And there's the lab, there's a school. There's NPCs that are wandering around all over the place, sometimes getting stuck, like this granny or grandpa, poor thing. And here you can actually sing. And you can see that the elderly folks in this town, I'm going to go away so that's kind of visually disrupting, catch it very easily, and singing in general spreads it very easily because you're outputting a lot more viral particles than simply talking or even just breathing. If I were to stand next to the mayor for long enough, they would eventually get infected, but it's really pretty easy to do that with a little bit of singing, and you get some love hearts along with it as well. So you can kind of see, you can kind of play around with it and like infect a few people and kind of see how it spreads from there. And it was sort of a thing we did. And you can also do masks on or off. So the professor can't get infected at all, but you know, any other random person, this is also an elderly person, we can sing to them. And while the ones up there got infected super quickly, this one's not yet infected. It's very close. If we stood here long enough, they would get infected as well. And then they would spread it to their families, who would then go into school or work. And there it is. There's that person's infected now as well. So you can see how the spread goes. But most people didn't even make it this far. So we spent a lot of time working towards this ending that was supposed to have a really guttural reaction of like, oh, I did that. Maybe I should think about my actions like in real life, because this is pretty similar to something like, I don't know, COVID. As a team, we met weekly for a while, even if there were no updates that week, and I think just slowly the passion faded. We were able to make a lot of improvements that were a lot of the low-hanging fruit. We made the map smaller so people didn't get lost. We made it easier to realize that you could test people in radius, little infection visual stuff. But oh man, even just looking at the page itself on itch, which I really ought to change this at this point. There's a bunch of future additions. We wanted to talk a little bit about like inequality with infection spread. There's a fancy area and a not so fancy area that's a little bit more crowded. They tend to work in more essential worker status. Just looking through this list, I'm like, okay, fast Patrice, like, calm down. Like, maybe step down a little, focus on one thing. We spent a lot of effort applying for the $20,000 grant. Unfortunately, did not get that. And without some kind of external support, without an educational background ourselves for a game that really, I think, ideally is a teaching aid in classroom settings, it was like there was no goal. For me personally, signing up to complete a 1-hour task for the game in a given week, it started eating into my mental space for other things and projects. It was something I procrastinated then felt bad about procrastinating. And then since I felt bad, I didn't do anything. Looking back, I think what we most lacked to see this through was one, educational background of some kind to help with designing and scoping, and a firm inroads to getting into classrooms, and two, a project manager. By somewhat default, I was filling that role, but it was taking a toll on me, especially as I was also the writer, kind of lead designer, lead programmer. It was a lot, and I think in a way was kind of tying it to my own personal success or failure as a game designer, because I was filling all these parts. If it didn't work out, then there's something wrong with me, which I know is silly. You don't need to tell me it's silly. I know, but my brain still thinks these things. I'm so glad I was able to participate in Jamming the Curve. Thrilled that my scrappy little team matched up to indie studios and was able to win a prize. I'm even glad we went through the process of putting together a grant proposal, even though we weren't chosen in the end. This game was a rough lesson in scope, getting a handle on complexity, marketing, even just little things like having a trailer for your game, because you never know when you'll need to or want to talk about it again. And with changes in technology, you don't know if you'll be able to play it again as you did at that point in time. Just in general, to see progress and see how you're growing as you're building, making games and experiences over time. All that being said, rest in peace, Outbreak in Space. If you want to play the game, you can catch it on my itch page, and feel free to follow me on Twitter for more random games from game jams. Yeah, thanks, PIGSquad.
All right, thank you so much, Patrice. That was great. Very interesting concept. Oh, I keep clicking the wrong thing. Here we go. Yeah, super interesting concept, and really, congratulations for winning a prize and everything like that. That's so cool. Also, as Marlo kind of suggested in the chat too, just like great takeaways. It's so much to learn about how game jams can kind of burn you out a little bit because of the amount of roles that you take on, and then honestly, that's a huge learning experience for getting into the industry too, because you don't want to be a part of too many roles, or else sometimes things can fall apart unless you're really scoped that way. So yeah, great work, and also a really interesting lesson in just kind of like scoping the player experience too, like feeling like your game might have been too big, but the thing that you put the most work into, the ending, wasn't experienced by players at the time. I think that's all extremely. I mean, everybody here in the chat is talking about how relatable that is, and I agree. Those are all huge lessons to be learned. So everybody, take note. But I do want to say, Outbreak in Space, we thank you so much for all of the learning moments that you have brought us. Yeah, we loved your particle effects and your fun little characters and the music. It was a great concept, and we want everybody to experience that twist, but I don't know if we'll ever get there. Thank you. F's in chat for Outbreak in Space. Thanks so much, Patrice. That was great. A note, I just want to let everybody know, I'll be checking in with everybody who is presenting this evening and making sure if they are comfortable with these presentations being shared online afterwards on YouTube. There'll definitely be VODs for, I think they stay up here on Twitch for a week or so, week and a half or something like that. But we'll also work on getting these onto YouTube. So again, amazing to be hearing so much free schooling in all of these post-mortem moments. So please take note and keep checking back on everybody as we continue hearing from all these projects. Next up, I would like to introduce our friend Toby, who made 20 different prototypes. I mean, probably made more by this time, but for the purpose of this video, had made 20 different prototypes. And eventually those, became games, but these specific 20 prototypes have not necessarily seen the light of day or have not come to fruition. So we are going to look at these 20 prototypes from Toby and say goodbye. Everybody, please, round of applause.
Hi, my name's Toby Alden. I'm a game developer. I've been making games for about 10 years now. And for Game Funeral, I'm going to show you all of the prototypes I've made and abandoned over the last couple of years. I have 20 in total, and I'm going to try and go quickly. Just spend maybe 30 or 40 seconds on each one, telling you what the premise was and why I ultimately abandoned it. Before I get into that, I want to show you this real quick. This is a template I made for my games. One of the advantages of working in the same framework, making all your games with the same tools, is you can pull code from other projects very easily. You can sort of cobble together new projects from old projects. And once I realized the frequency with which I was doing this, I decided to make a template project that contained all the formal elements of my games I kept reusing, but didn't have any actual content. And this is what I ended up with. So you can see there's a main menu. It loads a level with a player in it. The player can run around and jump. There's a save point. You can jump on some spikes and die. You come back to life where you last saved. And there's an end trigger, which when you touch brings you to the end screen that shows you how long it took and how many times you died. I have a similar template I made for Roguelikes games, which you'll see a lot of. And this is more or less the same thing. The only difference being it's top-down instead of a platformer, and the rooms you go into have some random variation to them. So I bring this up just because, you'll recognize a lot of elements from both these templates in the prototypes I'm going to show you. And also just if you're in the habit of doing a lot of rapid prototyping, I recommend throwing one of these together because I think it saves a lot of time down the line. So, that said, let's get into the first prototype. This one's probably the most fully formed of any of the ones I'm going to show you. The premise was basically roguelike Super Mario Brothers, so trying to procedurally generate platformer levels in an interesting way. And it was actually pretty successful. I still may come back and revisit this one. The furthest I really got with this was I started adding this kind of secret chain to it where you notice I picked up, this is supposed to be a pot. I picked up this pot and I'm carrying it around. And there's all these other pots and you can go inside them. And if you bring a pot into another pot and then go inside that pot, you enter this hell dimension. And my idea for this was that there was going to be like some sort of item here that you would need to recover and bring back to the main level, and that would open up some sort of secret passage or side path, but that was as far as I ever got. I might revisit this one. I think it's interesting. The challenges that get procedurally generated are pretty compelling, which is rare for a roguelike prototype, as you'll see. But for now, I just left it as is. This one's an avoidance game. Stars come at you. You try and avoid them for as long as you can. When you die, you get a screen saying how long you managed to survive for. I basically abandoned this one, even though it's basically finished. It's kind of just I made other games with really similar premises that were more interesting or had a more interesting twist, so I just decided to shelve this one. This one I wanted to make a Mega Man-like character, and then I also wanted to make a level that wrapped around horizontally, because I'd never done that. And I did both those things, and then for some reason I put in all these kind of perpetually falling snowballs. And then at this point I realized I just kind of made a weird tech demo and not a game and abandoned it, which is sometimes just the way it goes. This next one was actually designed to be a local multiplayer game, sort of in the style of Samurai Gun or Towerfall. And I sort of abandoned this one ultimately because I played it with my roommate and it just wasn't that fun. The conceit was you had these sort of like bird joust characters, so they can fly around. If I could remember the controls, I could show you. Yeah, sort of like that. And you had these attacks that were sort of like Lucina's tilt attacks in Smash Ultimate, and you tried to hit each other. And I played with my roommate, and it just wasn't that fun, so I shelved it. But I do think maybe there's something there. Maybe I'll revisit it another time, but not today. This was me trying to make a like roguelike sort of retro action RPG. It just wasn't that fun. Like, while I like the clunky feeling and I do think there's something there, like this is an idea I would like to revisit. The specifics of how this one shaked out, like the combat, it's kind of just like not very satisfying. So threw this one in the dumpster. This next one is a shmup. Honestly, I think the problem with my shmup prototypes is I just haven't played enough. So I'm sort of just like imitating formal elements of them without really knowing what makes them work. So, you know, maybe this is one I'll revisit after I get a little more expertise in the genre. But for now, I think this one is just relegated to the dustbin. I do like this attack, though, where it shoots all the bullets out and then sucks them back in. That I might steal and reuse for another project. This next one is a good idea of when you like have a specific idea in your head that you think might be fun, and then you try it out, and it's just not that fun. So the idea here, you can tell this is based off the roguelike template from earlier. You have things that follow you. There's 100 of these blue squares going around. If you get your tail to touch them, they change color, and you can see how many of them you've changed from blue to yellow in the top left. And it's just not that interesting or fun. So as soon as I figured that out, I stopped working on it. This next one has the same joust physics, sort of joust flight physics as the local multiplayer game I showed you. I think the idea here was that it was going to be kind of like a survival craft game. Like you were a bird and you would have to like collect food and twigs for your nest and stuff. But I never got further than just the level generation and the movement. I still like the movement, and I think maybe this could be retooled into like a sort of smaller scope game, like maybe just, you know, trying to avoid spikes and get to the end of the level or something. So maybe this one will return in some form, but didn't end up being what I had originally intended it to be. This one's another roguelike. This was me trying to figure out how to do melee combat in an interesting way, which personally I find much more difficult than doing ranged combat. And ultimately I think I just didn't really succeed here. I don't think the enemy movements are that interesting. I don't think your like move set is that responsive feeling or interesting. So I sort of just chalked this one up to like, you know, trying to learn something new and failing, which is, you know, part of the process of learning. So I do like the sort of more mazy level generation here. I think it complements the player's moveset pretty well, but yeah, there just wasn't enough there. This next one is again one of these sort of like single idea prototypes. My thought here was you had this, it's like a platformer, you have the stone you can throw out, you can pick it back up, and then if you press a button while the stone is out, you can yank yourself towards it. So the thought here was you would kind of do these tricky jumps where you're like yanking yourself towards the stone and then also picking it up at the same time. Like that. But in practice, it was just too hard. It was too hard to be fun. Like, you can't really pull it off consistently. There's a lot of just kind of trial and error. And I ultimately kind of ran out of ideas with the level design too. So this single screen is really as far as I got. And it is kind of complete in that sense. So maybe I should just release it as a single screen game someday. But this was another roguelike prototype. You can move, you can jump, you can double jump, you can dash, you can shoot arrows. I like the movement physics in this one quite a bit. There's some interesting sort of like slide jumps you can do using the jumps and dash in combination. The combat, I think, is pretty lackluster. It's like not that fun to try and align yourself horizontally with these enemies. And I think that was the main reason I abandoned it, was I just couldn't really find a way to make that compelling. But I might come back and steal the movement physics and retool it for something else, maybe less combat focused. This is another roguelike. This one really went nowhere. I think this is literally just a player you can move and then these kind of big labyrinthian levels. I was experimenting with a different method of generating levels from scratch instead of from like handmade templates. And as so often happens with these roguelike prototypes, you just sort of end up with kind of meandering, pointless space that's sort of fun to wander around, but doesn't really compel you to make a full game around it. This next one, I think I was just playing a lot of Spelunky at the time, and I wanted to make a platformer where you could hang onto ledges. So you can do that and climb ropes. I actually do sort of like this one still. There's a sort of appealing jankiness to it that I think might be worth revisiting, but until I think of a few more good ideas to slap on top of it, I think this one will probably just remain untouched for the moment. This next one is literally just me making the same prototype again. Like, this is the roguelike Mario levels from before. And basically there was kind of no reason to remake it, because I already had a perfectly good one. And you can tell it's kind of buggy too. It's like loading chunks of the level as you're moving, right? So I don't know. I just shouldn't have started working on this one when I already had one that was basically the same in progress. This one I still like. I don't really know how you would turn it into a full game, but this was basically my attempt at making a fishing game, and I never got further than the sort of like casting mechanics, which are actually really elaborate. You have to press once to kind of throw your line up, then you press it again to throw it, and then you can hold it again to reel it in. And you can do some like pretty fun kind of like trick shots like that with it. I think maybe I was sort of inspired by that survival craft game Raft, where you're like sort of constructing your base by grabbing things out of the ocean. Maybe wanted to do something like that, but survival craft games are a lot of work, and I didn't really feel like adding all of that to this. So for now, it's just a fishing game. This one, I'm trying to remember which this one is. Oh, I think this is a failed grappling hook prototype. So, grappling hook games, like roguelikes, are really hard to make interesting. The grappling hooks is one of these things that seems intuitively really fun, but then when you actually try and put it into a game, it's like hard to make interesting stuff to do around it. I think here my thought was I wanted it to be sort of more like rappelling, so you can like attach the grappling hook to the ground and then like walk off an edge and sort of safely lower yourself down. But yeah, I don't know. It just didn't end up being interesting enough. I do sort of like the level generation here. It feels like a little less designed than maybe some of my other prototypes, but yeah, I think this one kind of just didn't have enough going on to justify making it into a full game. I would still like to make a grappling hook game someday. And you can actually see this is my most recent attempt at that. My thought with this one, I think, was I wanted to make a game kind of like Jump King or Getting Over It, where it's like sort of trolly, like the character is a little hard to control, sort of unwieldy, and you know, ideally you would lose a lot of. It would be easy to lose progress, you know, just kind of like a fun trolley game like that. But as you can see, this is as far as I got with it, and it basically suffers from the same problem as the last one, which is grappling hook games are really hard to actually make interesting or to design levels for. So this one, and I guess it crashed. So there's that too. All right, just a few more left here, I think. I don't even remember what this one is. Oh, this was... so this one's kind of an outlier. This is like a traditional roguelike. You can move around this dungeon. There's like water. You can go up and down these stairs. And yeah, I don't know. I think I got this far and then realized I don't actually know how to design an interesting traditional roguelike, or know how to really program one. So, I don't know. I do like the mood of this one. Like, I think this kind of like small screens, this sort of like ruin a tower aesthetic. There's something there, but I would have to put a lot more thought into like what the actual game behind it is before I'd be like willing to commit any more time to this particular prototype. This next one, I think my idea was sort of like a procedurally generated stealth game. So it's got this top-down like WASD control. You can look around. There's these enemies, and they do have like line of sight, so you can see that guy saw me, but that guy can't see me because he's looking away. I also did this weird kind of like water ripple thing for some reason. Looks cool, I guess. But yeah, never really turned this into a full game. I think there's actually something there. Like if you made these enemies like have simple patrolling behavior, you know, walk around in circles or just walk around bouncing off walls, it could be pretty interesting. So maybe I'll revisit this one someday, but just sort of lost interest in it, I guess. And then I think this is the last one I have to show you, and this is just a platformer. I like the controls in this one a lot. You can double jump, you can wall jump. I think this was maybe based off Maddie Thorson's Money Seas, if anyone's played that. And the part about in this prototype that I was pretty excited about was this. There's these sort of hidden walls. So I think part of my design was going to be kind of like there would be one hidden space on every screen. It would be like these little single screen levels that you would try and uncover all the secrets on. I think maybe I stopped working on this one because level design's hard, and I couldn't think of like especially level design with constraints like fit everything on a single screen. I think I just ran out of ideas, but I might revisit this one someday. It's really fun to control. So that's it. Those are all my prototypes. Some of them I might come back to, most of them I won't. And I guess all I'll just say to cap it out is I think it's pretty normal to like have this ratio of like failed to succeeded ideas. Like, I don't consider all of these like abject failures. I think a lot of them were stepping stones towards games I later made that I did finish, or that, you know, did work out, did sort of have a meaty enough premise to be worth completing. So yeah, that's all I have to say about these. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks again to PIGSquad for letting me do this, and hope everyone has a good day. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Toby. That was great. I love seeing all those different prototypes, and personally too, I've been really making a lot of like very tiny projects and implementations lately, and it's huge. It does so much for you, and I think everybody here can really relate with regard to doing a lot of game jams and everything like that, being able to like pick apart old games and put them back together with new mechanics and everything like that. I also think you've got a lot of people inspired by a lot of different genres and stuff like that. So cool. And yeah, I mean, just to really think out that one. 20 prototypes. You do such a good job of making Toby a better and better game developer and designer, because we always look forward to the work that you 20 prototypes lead to. And thanks, Toby, for talking through all of those and going to it quick and showing us everything. That was so fun. Yeah, and I think if you haven't already, take a peek at some of Toby's past talent talks. They're all really good. Some of the games that were in here are talked about in those talent talks, especially addressing just like how to find your feel. I mean, we all kind of saw how kind of good feeling some of those mechanics felt, and even if they're, you know, living away in a prototype kind of thing, those things can always be revisited, and again, great learning experience to eventually make larger, fuller games that you could be a little bit more inspired by and keep going on. So again, thank you so much, Toby. That was great. I want to really quick take a very teeny tiny, not really break, but just like I just want to talk about some stuff around some of our upcoming events and remind everybody what's going down. Reminder that on the 29th, that is Wednesday next week, we are doing an art code night where people are going to be co-working in the Discord and sharing their screen and playing games, and some people are just gonna be lurking. Like, you're totally welcome to just show up and chat and or see what everybody's working on, or have everybody be background noise to you doing your own session kind of thing. We just do it right in the PIGSquad Discord. There's a link in the event that Dylan just linked. Shut up, Marlo. And Marlo's teasing me in chat, and maybe you know what? Maybe there's a good time to talk about our code of conduct. It's right there, Marlo. Take a look. Anyways, come to the art code night. We'll be very nice. We'll be nicer and not. Well, we'll be goofy like we are right now. It'll be great. But yeah, that's next week on Wednesday. Also really fun to just be able to see everybody's faces and all that kind of thing, or see their projects. And then we're doing a community showcase on the 7th. That's a Thursday, October 7th, almost October. And that's going to be really, really fun. We're going to be showing content and playing through some games of community members who are just working on long-term projects. It's really cool to see that, especially after doing summer slow jams and seeing a bunch of people's very, very short-term projects that they just worked on for 2 weeks. But here we're going to be hearing from people that you've probably seen some of their projects before, some of these projects you may not have heard of before, but it's really cool. It's really rewarding in PIGSquad PIGSquad to be able to kind of see over time what people's projects grow into, because it's just really inspiring, and it also kind of helps you inform you as to who you're gonna want to work with and everything like that, if you want to make games together with other people in the community. Other thing that is coming up, and I'm sorry, I've been meaning to all week, but stuff's been really, really busy. Get a little bit more information online. But just to let you know, I'm gonna have details up probably by this weekend, and you're the first people to see this. We're going to be very soon doing our horror game marathon. So that is going to be the word week is a mistake on this art, but we're going to be doing another horror game marathon this year. Last year, the way that we did it was we had a bunch of games to play from our horror game jam that we had just done, and we played Animal Crossing and did trick-or-treating and all that kind of thing. But this time, very similar to our 10-year anniversary stream, and kind of similar to our Talent Talk stream, we are going to have people submit content. And we're going to run a ton of different people doing a ton of different things. It's going to be super, super fun. So that includes things like... and a huge credit to the artist, Hugo, who is one of the developers on... Smile for Me, which we just played at one of our previous Game Jam streams. Thank you so much, Hugo. And to answer your question, Corwin, we'll be doing a couple of live things. I think most of it will be pre-recorded just for scheduling reasons. Very similar to the 10-year anniversary, we're going to be doing this horror game marathon where people are going to be submitting videos of themselves playing other people's PIGSquad games, whether they're horror or not, focusing in some cases on people's horror Game Jam games. There's so many Game Jam games that people have made over the years that were not made specifically for the horror Game Jam. That are still horror games. So that'll be super fun, kind of looking at your favorite horror indie games and playing through a little bit and sharing that with everybody. We really encourage people to submit talks, especially if you want to make them themed, but also acceptable if you don't make them themed, around something like Halloween, or horror game writing, or making scary art, or the haunted PS1 community, or just like any of those kinds of things. We also did in our 10-year anniversary a lot of kind of public access style content that people made, and that was super funny because people just kind of like celebrated games or Cube Pig or some of their favorite games in just kind of like a weird video that they made, and we're totally accepting those too because that was so funny. Get excited because we are going to be opening... Also, if you participated in the 10-year anniversary this year, the submission process will be way clearer. we did a lot of postmorteming on that event, and we're going to have a lot more things to take a look at for just like making sure communication's really clear and easy. Everybody can get their videos together and submit them, and then we'll do a run of show and agenda so everybody can see when their stuff goes live. And anyways, it'll be super, super fun. I can't wait. Why don't you just get another look at that creepy Cube Pig? Yes, it makes me so badly want one of those orange Halloween cookies. And to answer another question in the chat, do we have a submission date in mind? Probably going to open submissions starting the end of this week. And then, we probably will close submissions pretty dang close to Halloween weekend. Probably like maybe the Monday before or something like that. So there'll be a lot of time. There'll be, one way we've been thinking about it is there will be a lot of weekends for you to work on stuff. And hopefully we give you a jump on it with making stuff go live this week. And because I think for the 10-year anniversary, we even had a shorter amount of time to do it. But everybody did a good job. Cool. Any other questions about the horror game marathon? Seeing a couple of questions in here. Talking about Q-Pig cookie cutters. I agree with that. Anybody want to make a cookie cutter out of this? Please do. It would be great. Okay. looks like no more questions. So, anyways, that was my fun. That was my fun event rant that apparently Marlo hates so much. You can hear her booing in the background.
No, I'm a ghost.
Oh, she's a ghost. Never mind. Boo like a ghost. Anyways, we're going to be /gab, end gab. We are going to be hearing next from our friend Erik, who worked on a game for Global Game Jam called Breakbeats, and I guess we're not going to be hearing so much of Breakbeats anymore because we're here with the eulogy. So please give our friend Erik a round of applause.
Hi everyone, my name is Erik, and I'm here to give a eulogy for a game called Breakbeats. Breakbeats. Let me tell you the story of Breakbeats. Breakbeats was created during the Global Game Jam 2020 by a team of 4. Myself, of course, Aaron Haas, Dylan Ribb, and Jesse Holden. And for Dylan and I, it was our first game jam of any sort. So anyway, the team, we all decided we wanted to make a brick breaker, but in the style of Tetris Effect. And, well, the reason for that was brick breakers are easy, and for 2 of us, we were new to this. And Tetris Effect because, well, we kind of had the skill set that worked for that. Aaron was a visual effects artist, and Dylan and I are both musicians, so we figured we could probably pull it off. After the 3 days of the Global Game Jam, we had this. We were pretty hyped about what we'd accomplished, so much so that we decided to keep working on it for the next 3 weeks with the intent of showing off the game at the Global Game Jam Showcase. And here's Dylan and I showing off the game at that event. After the showcase, my teammates decided that they were good. They wanted to move on. But I decided to keep working on the game because I didn't really have much of a social life, and I stayed in most of the time, so why not? And thankfully, having no social life and staying in all the time kind of came into vogue in early 2020. And that's how Breakbeats became my early COVID hobby project. Other people made sourdough, knitted, and binged Tiger King, and I worked on Breakbeats. So let me give you an idea of what I was originally thinking for the scope of this game. I figured if I could build the basic engine and say 20 to 30 levels, I'd have, well, and of course, make it work relatively similar to Tetris Effects, where the visuals and the music work together. I could have something modestly successful that could be a viable Steam game. Of course, this was my first serious game project, and I didn't have experience doing things like 3D modeling or making animations like these, or doing visual effects like these, or doing world-class coherent art direction like all of this. But despite all that I lacked, I had what every beginner has. Delusions. When I started, I thought Breakbeats 6 to 9 months. 6 to 9 months sounds like about how much time it would take to make this game. And remember, that's 20 to 30 levels, each with a unique song, unique backgrounds, unique visual effects. And I thought I could make something equivalent-ish to Tetris Effect without all of these people. Now, let's talk about how it actually went. The more I worked on it, the more I reduced scope. At the beginning, I thought 20 to 30 levels. After a number of months in, I think I'd reduced that to 15, 8, just kept shrinking it in scope. But also, eventually, I got enough work done that I could somewhat realistically estimate the total work. If you do build a couple levels and some of the base mechanics, then you have an idea of, okay, it took this long to do this, it'll take this long to do the rest. And when I came up with a good estimate, the answer was not 6 to 9 months. And then shortly thereafter, I hit the 9-month mark. And I kind of lost momentum, and I abandoned the project. It was, I guess, demoralizing to hear how much effort it would actually take. And that's when Breakbeats died. Now, despite what little I knew at the start, and despite abandoning the project, I did a lot of work, and I learned a massive amount. Let me show you how it looked and sounded when I stopped work on it. And one caveat is that what you saw earlier from the Global Game Jam, I scrapped all of that and rebuilt everything from the ground up. So here is how Breakbeats looked once it was shelved. You can see it has all the basic brick breaker mechanics. I built 3 different levels with placeholder music and sound effects and animations. The most pivotal thing that I built was a system that changed the music as the player hit milestones in the game. It also would bring up different patterns of bricks corresponding with each section of music. The bricks in the background all animated in time with the music based on a system that allowed any object in the game to say, I'm going to subscribe to that beat, and I'll kick off an animation when that beat happens. And a lot of what I built is the foundation of just about any rhythm game. But yeah, I learned a lot in creating all of this, in achieving all of this. I learned Unity's animation system, Unity's UI system, Unity's 3D physics system, using Fmod with Unity, using Fmod's music system, using Fmod's subscription callback system, controller support, lerping, in-depth collision math, particle systems, shader graphs, URP, saving preferences, basic art direction, and better ways of doing project management. But the hardest lesson I learned, even though many of you likely recognize me from Twitter, Discord, other presentations like this that I've done, you likely don't recognize Breakbeats. Despite having a playable game, I never asked anybody in PIGSquad to check it out. I didn't talk much about it, and when I got stuck, I didn't ask questions for fear that people would find out how little I really knew. And that's not a reflection on PIGSquad. Everyone in PIGSquad is absolutely wonderful, and everyone is always open to everyone at every learning level. But here's the thing. I'm 44 years old, and I've been making software for more than half my life, and I thought that meant I could just jump into games and be great at making games. I was ashamed of not already knowing everything that I needed to know. So I hid my work, and I kind of hid myself. I wasn't as active in PIGSquad. And I think that was wrong. Not knowing is, it's the starting point for all of us. But this experience, it forced me to recognize the gaps in my knowledge and my abilities. And that's hard. It was hard. It's still a little bit hard. I still have plenty of gaps in my knowledge and abilities. But I don't want those gaps to be a shroud of shame. They are a part of me. The things that I don't know are reasons to reach out to others, to ask, hey, do you want to work together? Hey, do you know this thing that I don't know? There are reasons to spend time doing tutorials and participating in more game jams. I won't be working on Breakbeats again. And not because I'm ashamed of it. Looking back and kind of pulling it back up, I'm kind of quite proud of it, in fact. But I kind of got burnt out, of course. But the real reason I'm not going to be working on Breakbeats is because I've learned that there are other styles of games that I enjoy making more. So that's the story of Breakbeats. I hope it has helped you to maybe work something similar, some thoughts or inner barriers that you might have. Learning is normal. We're always doing it. And you don't have to be ashamed of it. But I totally understand if you are, because sometimes I still am. Thanks to everybody at PIGSquad for being here, there. When I'm humble enough to ask for help, I ask, and people help out. If you haven't participated in PIGSquad before, everybody is great. Like I said, everybody is open to every level of learning. If you want to find me on Twitter or Discord, I'll put some things on the screen somewhere, maybe here and here. Yeah, that's it. Goodbye, Breakbeats. Breakbeats.
All right. Thank you so much, Erik. Again, everybody is talking about in the chat. Getting real here. Let's talk about our learning moments. Let's talk about the things that make us the game developers we are today, and in some cases, the people. Erik, thank you so much for sharing that vulnerable moment. I think the word failure is thrown around in very interesting and positive ways at things like Game Funeral, and I'm really thankful for that. I think not even that you're calling what you did a failure, but talking about that idea of coming out with a result that you did not intend, and or even I think the healthy separation that you're talking about right now, of saying I'm not going to work on this anymore because I realize there's other stuff I'd rather be working on. I think that's really, really cool. And I mean, we can also see a glimpse of that with someone like Toby's presentations as well. I'm thinking about blowing through 20 prototypes in 20 minutes for that presentation. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And Breakbeats, I remember you from very first at when I saw you at Global Game Jam. You were great. You looked amazing. You just kept getting better and better, and then your time with us was cut short. And we regret that you were never able to grow into the release that you deserve to be, but we are so thankful for the effort that you put forward into Erik's game dev journey and to all of ours. Thank you so much. Uh-oh, things are getting too real. I'm giving real, I don't know, Game Deacon comments? I don't know how to say that. Thank you so much. And yes, see you, Lil Game Angel. But yeah, I mean, honestly, Erik, you should bring it out to a showcase sometime. Maybe share it at an art code night. Have a couple of people get hands on it, or in an art code night when we get back in person. Just bring it out for people to play around with. It's pretty cool. I'm also okay. I'm not telling you. I'm not singling you out, Erik. I'm addressing everybody, and I've talked about this with all of our past game funeralers. That in some cases, some people will present these games and be like, wow, why did I stop working on this? This is an awesome idea, and like it wouldn't be too hard to do this now. So Game Resurrection is where it's at next time. Maybe in 5 years we'll do Game Resurrections when people look back on their games like, oh no, I gotta keep going on this. Yes, the game Necromancy. Yeah, an in-person game memorial would be very, very fun. If you didn't see the last game funeral where Ted made a 3D representation of you burying your game and seeing your gravestone and like photos of it and all that other kind of thing, not as sad as Tamagotchi, but really good. And oh my god, the open the coffins of it. Oh my god. Actually, we definitely we're still figuring this out. We were intending on doing a physical event around this time, but then Delta variant picked up really, really big time, and we were talking about doing something where we had people bring out their game funeral games right after doing a game funeral, which I think is like essential now. Like, play around with my 2-minute prototype, please. That would be awesome. And actually, Jamie brings up a great point. The idea of continuing your projects that may have had a huge hiatus. We're probably going to do this again this year. We did, actually, let me just single it out really quick. We did Finish Your Game Jam last year, where we had people submit games that they were just like made a little bit of progress on. Like, they made a special submission page for a game that they had already been working on, and they just made a little bit more progress on it. Wow, 94 entries. And some people just made a game from the very get-go. They started something new just for a fun regular old game jam. But actually, you can see a lot of games that we've talked about a lot over time. Invader Simulator, Trash the Planet. We've got Caddy and Batty released after this game jam. Sungorth. A lot of people making progress on games that they had in the works for a while. So I guess encourage everybody to think about that game jam probably coming up in November. Anyways, enough of that. Enough of my gab. Oh yeah, Corwin, please bring your 3D playground to a game event where we can play all of the game funeral games. That was so fun. Cool. Anyways, let us next hear from our friend Andrew. You might recognize his work from very recently. There were a lot of nautical-themed tactics games, and I think in this presentation we're going to hear a little bit about why that might be relevant. We are going to hear from him about Tavern, Brawl, Dungeon Crawl, so please give him a hand.
Welcome to the game funeral for Tavern, Brawl, Dungeon Crawl. My name is Andrew Goodenough. I'm an indie game developer, and I make strategy RPGs. These are screenshots from the different turn-based, tile-based tactics games I've worked on. I do code, I do design, I do production. And tonight, I would like to invite you all to mourn with me on a strategy RPG that did not work out. This is a screenshot from late in development on Tavern, Brawl, Dungeon Crawl. We were trying to design a tactics game that captured the hectic, chaotic mess that is a bar fight, where nothing is strategized, everything is improvised, is a sequence of moment-to-moment decisions of who can I hit, who's going to hit me, what can I hit them with. We captured this with this game mechanic of throwing. Anything in the scene could be thrown. Here on the left, we see Old Man Jenkins is throwing a crate that's next to him. He could throw that at an enemy to deal damage. He could throw it in front of an enemy to block them. He could throw it to an ally for them to break open and maybe get an item from inside. There's all sorts of like different interactions you could do with the different items from around the scene. You also don't just throw items. In the other GIF, which unfortunately my webcam is blocking, but we have an example of throwing other characters. So you could throw an ally up onto a table so they have a better like vantage to throw something else, or you could throw an enemy to deal damage, knock their heads together. We were really excited about this throwing mechanic. There's a lot of very different ideas we had during the brainstorming. All sorts of big ideas, like improvised weapons. Like, oh, you could throw crates and barrels. You could throw chairs. You could reach behind you and grab like a mug of ale. We had this whole system, not just using those to attack, but also to like parry. So like if you had a chair, if an enemy threw a chair at you, it would like parry their chair because you had a pair. We had a whole system of like emergent gameplay where like, you could throw a gold coin to a bartender and they would throw you an ale, and then you could throw the ale and that'd spill, and then like it would set fire, and all the wooden things would now be in flames. So you'd have a flaming chair to throw. We had a whole like series of NPCs that we would love to write with like scripted interactions of like, yes, maybe this kooky character will join you in your fight if you buy him a drink, but like this other guy, this weird enemy would fight you because you broke their favorite chair. Like just kind of dynamic scripted interactions. We had a couple different like taverns we wanted to do to bar crawl between. Like we had this whole series of like, you're gonna bar crawl within this dungeon of taverns. Like it was gonna be like a sequence of levels with each tavern being weirder and crazier and deeper than the last. And then we also just had this like technical goal of like, wouldn't it be cool to see a character encumbered with all of these different improvised things they were holding? So like they'd have a sword and also like the chair, and you could see them holding the lid of a barrel or something. These are all very, very cool, big ideas. But we all know the ancient game dev wisdoms to not overscope. In particular, Kieran and I, who worked on this project together, worked on a previous project together. We worked on cryptozootography late last year. This was a 2-week game jam. We made the strategy RPG where you're hiking across the Pacific Northwest in search of wild cryptids. A very cool game. It had this like Pokemon style mechanic where if you took a photo with the cryptid, they'd join you on your adventure. We are very proud of this game, but we were disappointed after that game jam because in only 2 weeks we weren't able to fully realize like the full scope of all the monsters we wanted to have, all the different interactions between the monsters, and all the different like design space that it invited. So with our next project, like I turned to Kieran and I was like, hey, as producer, I think we should do something safe and conservative and doable and like really nail it out of the park. And Kieran was like, that's smart, we should do that. Like, what do you have in mind? We turned to those ancient game dev wisdoms, which have been echoed from retrospective to retrospective throughout game dev generations. We've all heard it. You should make something small. You should make something fast and achievable. Something you scope down to something you can do really quick. Hey, you should do something incremental, like play to your strengths, know your limits, just do a little step on top of what you've already done. And hey, the greatest of all ancient game devs wisdoms, you should try and make something polished. Like, it's better to do one thing really well and really deeply than do a lot of things really poorly. So Kieran and I went back to our original brainstorming. We looked at all those really cool big ideas we had, and we started cutting. We made them small, incremental, and polished. We got our scope down to a nice, manageable, safe position. We cut the improvised weapons. We decided just to opt for just swords. You can see them stuck there in the table, which also meant we cut pairing because there was no longer like, I had a sword and you had a chair leg. It was like everyone has swords. We cut the emergent systems of fire and gold and wood and ale. Like, obviously that's a very complicated system. It would require a lot of work. Goodness knows there would be a lot of like weird permutation edge cases that we would never catch, and it would just be a huge source of bugs. We cut all the different NPCs and their weird script interactions. We cut like the bar crawl narrative and all the different taverns. We said, let's just focus on like a few characters, like just to player characters, and then let's focus on just one level. Let's scope down all of that. So we just do one thing. Let's pick our battles here. And then we also cut the on-character inventory. We were like, hey, we'll just do a HUD element above it where you could see what people are holding and stuff. You just hover over all the different enemies if you want to know what's in their inventory. Don't worry about it. We started work on this. We worked on it for about 2 months. Here's a GIF of like the really early prototype of the throwing. I'm really happy with how it turned out. There's a legend in the top right for what's happening here. The red, blue, and green like capsules there are your player characters, and you can throw swords and weapons and items between each other, which are signified by the yellow dot or the pink dot or the green dot. You can pick things up off the ground. There's a very interesting ebb and flow of like throwing a weapon and then going to retrieve a weapon to throw, or like throwing it to an ally. So you had one person just focusing on picking things up and throwing them to their allies, and someone else was just like hucking them at all the enemies. Lots of very interesting design space here. Excuse me. Kieran did a great job paying up the scene. He designed this awesome, like, cozy tavern. He made all the player characters and all the enemy characters with the kind of same 3D model. He's a 3D modeler by trade, so he was able to like sculpt those out really efficiently and like export out a bunch of different characters. These are not the final build, the final characters. We did a lot of work between like our throwing prototype and all of our different art, all of our art assets, but in the end, we never finished the project. Our interest in the project waned, our excitement in the project waned. Slowly but surely, all of our deadlines slipped. Every time we were like, oh, this time for sure we'll finish it, it just kept getting pushed out farther and farther. And all that work just languished. Unreleased, unfinished, never quite at a place where we could like chunk it out as a release. And now I'm here tonight to put it to rest. So what can we learn? Like, what can we take away from Tavern Brawl Dungeon Crawl? I invite you to dream bigger. Don't be afraid to dream bigger. The ancient game dev wisdoms are very smart. They're very, very, very good. Especially if you're optimizing for time or money. If you're in a risky project, those are good. That's good advice. But those ancient game dev wisdoms do not account for your heart. If the game idea doesn't stir your soul, like, it's not worth your time. It's not worth your money. It's not worth all your effort. I would rather, be excited about a project that may inevitably fail than be uninterested in a project that has been crushed into something so deeply safe. And that's something I learned from this project. I've always been like cut and cut and cut, small and safe and incremental and polished. Like, let's focus on, but like, if you do that, you sculpt out everything that makes the project cool and interesting for something for you to work on, something for your players to play. And hey, get this, even if you do dream too big and you fail to deliver that big dream, you'll still make something good enough. You'll still have a good enough dream. There's that old-timey saying of like, shoot for the moon. If you miss, you'll land among the stars. And although it is astronomically incorrect, like, it holds this vision of like, hey, you might not hit the moon, but you'll land up somewhere else cool, better than hanging out on this little rock. And lastly, I want to iterate, all games are hard to make, regardless of scope, be them big or small. Making games is a lot of work, and you'll only burn yourself out if you're, trying to hold your breath and commit to something that your heart isn't in. What incited us to try and be more safe and conservative was cryptocartography, because again, we weren't able to fully realize all of those different ideas that we originally envisioned for cryptocartography. But hey, cryptocartography is out. And like, although it only has 3 cryptids in it, and not like, the 20 or 30 or 50 that we envisioned, like, it's still good. It's still really good. And I also want to shout, like, hey, even though we failed to like ship or release Tavern Brawl Dungeon Crawl, we still learned a lot. Like, it's still a success despite all its failings. Like, Kieran did this 3D pipeline of like sculpt and rigging and exporting out final characters that was a pain point for us in cryptocartography, of having to like redraw units over and over from every different angle, for every different lighting, for every different animation. Like, no, we can just animate and rig this once. We'll texture it. If we're doing human characters, they'll have kind of similar proportions. We can put out more art without having to like reinvent everything every single time. So like, we hit many of our goals for this project. It's just a lot of the goals that we that really stirred our soul were things that we sheared away at the beginning. Since then, Kieran and I have worked on other projects. We did Leviathan Dawn a few weeks ago for the PIGSquad Summer Slow Jams. Likewise, for this project, there's all sorts of cool ideas we never got around to, but we didn't preclude them. We didn't cull them at the beginning of the project. We still dared to dream big, and I think that helped rally our team and stir our heart, especially for a slow jam. It's 2 weeks. You don't want to burn out just because you're no longer feeling the project. It is with a heavy heart that I must now lay Tavern Brawl Dungeon Crawl to rest. I'd really hoped that eventually I would just suddenly find the inspiration to go back and finish it. But it is at a point now where I recognize I'm going to be moving on to other projects, and this code and this art will languish even further. So I'm glad to have a time tonight to share what we learned and what we pulled from it, and hopefully it will inspire y'all to also dream bigger on whatever you move on to next. My name is Andrew Goodenough. I've worked on this with Kieran Lampert. You can follow us on Twitter. We see whatever the hell we make next. In the meantime, have a good night, y'all.
All right. Thank you so much, Andrew. That was great. Yeah, really impressive looking work. And as everybody's saying here in chat, what a cool, reverse perspective to think about this in. I think your original experience of going into this game and thinking just we're going to pre-cut everything. We're going to do something concise, and we're going to make it work that way. And then eventually that not being able to contribute, that kind of almost lack of inspiration, because as you're saying, you're not dreaming big enough, not being able to contribute back into your motivation was what kind of stalled the project out. That's a super interesting topic to discuss, especially with how many people have learned and how many people talk about how dreaming too big is the primary killer, which I think is still true. Most people learn these lessons of not abandoning games because of how much they try to dream too big on things. But yeah, I think that's a very comfortable and helpful way of thinking about it too, to just, hey, dream big on this thing, and also not to be afraid of releasing something big dream. But there's also some other kind of formula in there, maybe it is cut, and then try to dream big from something very small rather than starting blue sky. I don't know. Or in your case, blue ocean. I don't know if everybody's seen, there was the other game that Andrew and friends made for Summer Slow Jams this year. I believe this was July. Made Dead Men Tell No Tales, strategy, top-down strategy game based on some Fire Emblem-esque treatments. Obviously, such funny character designs. Do love those. And then, as Andrew just showed off, Leviathan Dawn. Obviously, a great way to think about a learning moment from making a tactics game, and/or knowing how to make a tactics game from starting on the Brawl Dungeon Crawl and translating it into something that was truly going to be finished in 2 weeks. It's okay to say goodbye to a game jam game after 2 weeks, all those kinds of things. So super, super cool. One of the reasons I wanted to show these off too is that these were made during Summer Slow Jams. We have all of these games available to play on our PIGSquad itch page that I just linked in the chat. If you go to pigsquad.itch.io and scroll down, you can see everything that people is making during these jams. You can see Leviathan Dawn right here and Dead Men Tell No Tales right here, the ones that we just looked at. And yeah, there's a lot of really good stuff. And the Finish Your Game Jam, again, we just mentioned that. Doing some jamming around projects that we want to continue this coming November. If you're thinking about presenting some content for the horror game marathon in the last weekend of October, you can of course look to the horror jam that we did in August, but there's also a lot of other horror themed games in these categories here. And Somebody's got to play Travis's Cult Solutions. Got to see that one. That one's hilarious. Anyways, yeah, look how far back these go. This is all just a huge testimony to games that people wanted to try out and might not explore ever again, and we have what we have, and really, really cool to be thinking about these in the context of something like Game Funeral. But I wanted to say super quick to Tavern Brawl Dungeon Crawl, sorry. We appreciate the perspective that you bring to us, game, and we would love to see more from you, of course, in the learning moments that you bring us, and with the fun little hoppity characters that were rigged for your tactical majesty. We hope that you are doing well in that wonderful tavern brawl in the sky, and hope that you rain down all throwables upon us to inspire further game dev inspirations. That's what we said. Thank you so much, Andrew. That was super fun, and such a great way to look through so many past projects and get super excited about the visuals. So cool. We have one more presentation left from our friend Stephan, talking about the Viking Roll, but we are just going to take a quick 1.5 minute break. I think we learned from one of our presenters, I think it was Erik, that you also have to drink water or else it's going to be your funeral. So that wasn't a planned joke or anything like that. It was just stupid. I said a stupid thing. Rip my comedy career, and we will see you in about 1.5 minutes. Thanks. All right, we are back, everybody. Thanks for taking a little break with us. Again, we are going to introduce our friend Stephan, who is going to tell us a little bit about the end of days for a game called The Viking Roll. Please, everybody, a virtual round of applause.
When I found out about the game funeral, that's what it's called, game funeral, I thought, well, Stephan, you're so busy, you just moved, are you really going to do that? And I thought, well, yeah, let's do it. So, here we are, let's do it. I said to myself, hey Stephan, you're a Viking, why don't you make a game about Vikings, or Kia, or werewolves, or something like that, something you know, something that's in your blood, something you can say, hey, I made this game, this is me. I started questioning myself, I said, hey Stephan, are you really a Viking? I thought, well, what better way to check this than a checklist. So, here we go, the checklist. As you can see, I have already gone through this checklist and checked it, but just to double check, we shall check it again. So, check this. Yeah. Eat lingon and meatballs at least once per day. Yeah. Drink 4 to 5 cups of coffee. Yeah. Talk about the weather. Yeah. And maintain a social awkwardness toward anyone outside the friend circle I made as a child. Yeah. So it turned out that I am a Viking. I got 100% in all the things that I wrote down that I checked off. So, 10 out of 10, that's 100%. And, I know it's true because I can feel it deep down in my bones, my blood. But it's, it's been a long time since I've gone on any sort of raid or made any furniture or, any of those things integral to who I am. I'd say I'm just not a very good swimmer, so... Maybe, maybe there were many more Vikings who weren't good swimmers, and they just didn't get to where they were going because they're like, oh, hey, there's a wave, what are we going to do? Okay, oh, we're done, that sort of thing. So, being a bad swimmer Viking, that's fine with me, but, I probably should be talking about this game now. That's what this whole video is supposed to be about, and, no, it hasn't been. So, here we go, the game. After doing some thorough research for my dreams, I created this game called the Viking World. In the Viking World, I had to basically tell people, the general public, that Vikings actually didn't not roll, they rolled. Like so, they would just kind of go in circles across the water until they got to the destination. It made traveling a little bit difficult. Sometimes it got a little slow. If it hit a rock, then we'd be stuck, but we never hear about those Vikings get stuck by rocks. It's always the ones who actually made it, so we don't need to worry about the rock Vikings. Okay, so as you can see, with the tension of the water would sometimes roll with the boat. And the Viking Roll, it recreates the rolling days of Vikings and a family-friendly racing game for 3 or more people. What you'll need. So, if you don't have a cube set, which is what I had when creating this game, you will need some wooden blocks or something to mark the race course. You have get some socks, some socks with holes in them, or any sort of socks that you like. Wool socks that might smell, but they're soft and cushiony, so you could use those as well. So get those socks and you roll them into a ball. So these are going to be kind of like water balloons. And then you need a large bowl of water, and then a yard or someplace to roll. A yard works, a street works, but watch out for cars if you're going to be on the street. And preferably someplace flat, but you can also do downhill if you want a little bit more excitement. And then we're supposedly in this game you're supposed to have a destination map. That is actually the part that never got finished, so we'll talk about that later. So in the Viking World, players take turns racing through the racetrack by rolling along the ground. There are 3 roles: the Viking ship, Thor, and Loki. So the Viking ship is the racer rolling through the course. We'll call him the roller. The Thor throws lightning boosts, which are socks that have been put into water, and then Loki keeps track of time. So Loki begins by counting down. Once it gets down to 0, the roller begins rolling through the race course as fast as they can go. And the roller can ask for a lightning boost by shouting boost, at which point Thor must then throw a lightning boost, which is the sock. And if the sock, which is the lightning boost, hits the roller, Loki pauses the stopwatch for 3 seconds. That way he can have a faster time. When the roller crosses the finish line, Loki then stops the stopwatch and everyone switches roles. The goal is to have the fastest lap through the race course. As I said before, this is an unfinished game for Jam. The Jam is listed down below. The Jam was a harmful resource, and that harmful resource was the lightning boost socks that would help racers reduce their race time. And so while they would be hit with these water-like balloons, or water balloon-like socks, I guess, even though it's a very traditional game, it's it's still a harmful resource. No one likes to be hit with a wet, stinky sock. So that was how it fit with the Jam theme. But why this game was not finished was there was no destination map. I did not have time to go around my yard and create various different racetracks. So if anyone else wants to create some racetracks that we can put on to this page, that would be great. Otherwise, this game I think is off to Valhalla. It has served its purpose, and we will think fondly of it after it goes. But we just don't have time to complete it right now, and so it's it's a good historical game. Good to think about. It's like haha, good times. Yeah, that's I think is going to be it, and I hope you enjoyed this very educational video about this historical game and learned a bit more about Viking culture and Viking history. And so if you see me on the streets, you can say, hey, Stephan, I really enjoyed that concept of game that never actually came or occurred, because it could have been great, it could have been wonderful, but life, and I say, yeah, I get what you mean. It's all good. That's the game. So yeah, tack så mycket, and see you later.
All right, thank you so much, Stephan. That was fun. It's so fun to look back on something like physical games that were not finished, especially like during a pandemic where you don't go outside and test with a lot of people. And also, yeah, I think just based on what we just talked about with regard to keeping your separating that idea of game jam games from your long-term projects. I mean, I think that's maybe something that we haven't really seen a lot of tonight, is sometimes it's really frustrating and disappointing to not finish a jam game. So thank you for that perspective, and I think that idea of learning a little bit more about kind of like a subject matter and having that be your learning moment come out of a game that was not finished is another really interesting perspective. I know that when I'm typically working in little projects that I that I don't finish, or that I just prototype and leave alone kind of thing, of course my learning moment is always just like, oh yeah, I learned how to do this in this programming language, or I learned this about sprites or something. But thinking about really drilling down and considering subject matter as something that you're working with, and then saying like, oh well, at least I learned this subject matter, is a really, really interesting perspective. But the Viking roll, just let me tell you, I would have loved to be able to throw socks in your name, even the stinky socks, even the wet socks. I would have loved to go over to more thoroughly explore this game after the game jam that we had, and consider all of your harmful resources. But we all know, I mean, Stephan said it himself, you are safe and celebrating in Valhalla. So thank you so much, the Viking World. And I think that's, yes, F's in chat, everybody. Not only for the Viking roll, but for Game Funeral this year. Thank you so much. Not only F's, but claps in chat for everybody who is able to present this year. We had our friend Isaac with Times New Gunman, Patrice with Outbreak in Space, Toby with a bajillion, aka 20 prototypes, Erik with Breakbeats, Andrew with Tavern, Brawl, Dungeon Crawl, and Stephan with the Viking Roll. That was great. There's a million learning moments to be had here, and like I said, this presentation, this video that you just watched, both the live elements and the pre-recorded elements, will be available here on Twitch as a VOD for the next, I think it's 10 days, 2 weeks, whatever it is. So you can come back to twitch.tv/PIGSquad/videos to rewatch this. And then in the meantime, I am going to be chatting with our presenters about if everybody's comfortable having their stuff uploaded to YouTube. So we'll get this up to YouTube within the next couple of weeks. And another reminder, I think Isaac did very well in kicking us off this way, talking about forming community, getting yourself out there, talking to new people, and leaving yourself open to talking to people. I know that there are a lot of people who gave presentations this evening who are more than happy to chat with you about either continuing to discuss their funeral projects, their buried projects, their ascended projects, in Discord and otherwise. Discord's going to be our main channel right now in PIGSquad. You can join that at bit.ly/PIGSquad Discord, which I'm going to say right now in the chat. So please hang out there. It's a great place to share your work. All anybody ever gets is positive emojis and comments, and that's usually the worst you get. And then the best you usually get is somebody drilling over your project or asking you to work with them at the next game jam. So that is pretty cool. We also have an art code night coming up on Wednesday next week at 7 p.m. That is going to be held in the Discord, and we're going to be in the voice and video chat channels to share our screens and just kind of work on stuff. People will be chatting. People sometimes break out into other rooms and play games together, something like Jackbox. But if you are interested in seeing what's going on, but not necessarily participating per se, we also have a text channel that is paired along with that video and voice channel where people are talking in there and sharing links, and you're welcome to lurk, you're welcome to just chat via text, you're welcome to mute yourself or any of those kinds of things. So please feel free to do that. Somebody just said that this track was very good. This is our friend Steve made this track that's playing in the PIGSquad playlist right now. I just linked it in chat if you want to check it out. Another reminder as well that very similar to tonight's showcase and very similar to all the Game Jam showcases that we did recently, we have a community project showcase which talks about people's longer term projects. This one's gonna be really cool. There's a lot of stuff that people submitted, and we're gonna see a huge variety of a lot of interesting projects. Some of them are projects that you will recognize and you will see some new progress on. Some of these are projects that I don't think some people have even shared their projects before in the PIGSquad Discord or via Twitter or anything like that. So you'll be able to get to see a lot of different things that people are working on in the community, and it is going to be awesome. And then another reminder too, everybody was shown the special art that we are going to be sharing with everybody else in the world very, very soon. This Friday, probably. I just said end of the week because it's probably just going to be the end of the week. We are going to be sharing the sign-up sheet for the PIGSquad Horror Game Marathon, and that is going to be That's going to be people sharing playthroughs of PIGSquad games, whether they are horror games or not. PIGSquad horror games as well. Favorite horror games, making that fun public access content, that public access style content that people made at the 10-year anniversary. Things like talent talks, like if you want to give any sort of talk on a small bit of thing that you're kind of an expert in, or that you want to share, even just a game dev experience that you had, almost similar to what we did tonight at Game Funeral, then please reach out. Bonus points, of course, if those topics are related to horror, like writing in horror games, or sound design for horror games, or a horror game that I once made that I am not working on anymore, or a horror game that I uploaded to itch and you can play it now even though I made it 6 years ago. All that kind of stuff is super welcome. So that's our horror game marathon. We had somebody ask who did the art. That was Yugo Limbo. They actually made the game Smile for Me, which is something that we played for the opening of our last jam. So make sure to check that out. Such cool work all the time. It's always got that nice little creepy tone on it. I love it. And then one more question too about the community showcase. I'm not quite sure if we have room left in the community showcase, but please still reach out. I think it would be really fun to get more projects in, and we might have some smaller time slots available. So please reach out if you're still interested in doing the community showcase, and we are wanting to do those more often so that, because we can't see each other in person, we can see people's ongoing work more often in a kind of like focused share-a-thon, similar to what we're doing here on Twitch. And I think that is it. If anybody else has any questions about the horror game marathon coming up, the community showcase, our art code night, anything else coming up through the end of the year, I guess another thing we talked a little bit about is how we're probably going to be doing the Finish Your Game Jam in November again. Please reach out. But yeah, thank you so much, everybody, for the great evening. And again, thank you so much to our presenters, Isaac, Patrice, Toby, Erik, Andrew, and Stephan, for presenting with us tonight. I think I learned a ton about every single person's presentation, and even in small moments where we're just kind of like discussing your games and everything like that, it's really, really cool to just see that perspective of people talking about games that they were working on in 2014 versus games that they were working on this year. All these different game ideas, from tactics games to in-person physical games where you're throwing socks at each other, to making a lot of different prototypes and finding out which one feels like a game and which one feels like is not worth pursuing anymore. I think all of this was amazing. So thank you. Hope to be able to share this very soon. Of course, in VOD form, it'll be here on Twitch if you'd like to rewatch, but also on YouTube. We also, as a note, have our talent talks from August being uploaded very, very soon to YouTube. That's probably another thing that's going to be taken care of this weekend. So again, one last F in the chat for all of these wonderful projects. May they live on in our minds as wonderful experiences and learning moments. And we will see everybody very, very soon. Talk to you later.